I just can't help but think that maybe everybody would have just been better off if Hanoi Jane had just stayed in Vietnam. Well, everybody except the Vietnamese. Jane Fonda blames white men, who else, for climate crisis. Calls to arrest and jail them. That's right. Arrest and jail all of the white men. I mean, I guess except for the richest ones, which she would marry and divorce before having them jailed. So let's see. Jane Fonda blamed men and racism for climate change during a conversation at this year's Cannes Film Festival, arguing that without the patriarchy, the crisis allegedly of epic proportions would cease to exist. So she's wrong about everything, of course. The crisis isn't a crisis. Men are only half the people on the planet. I'm pretty sure they're not entirely to blame for all use of fossil fuels. And racism, of course. Yeah. Because these insane Hollywood champagne socialists, it's just second nature for them. Because they're so used to offering up these indulgences to calm their tormented conscience that it's basically the same as breathing at this point. But what I want to know is this, Vietnam's in Asia. Why doesn't she go back there and talk to them about their racism? Because Asia is 53% of global emissions, and half of them are men. And the left has decided that Asian people do a little bit too well, so they're basically white people now too. Don't believe me, just ask Harvard. Why isn't she in China right now demanding a meeting with Chairman Xi so that she can castigate him and demand that he stop having a country so that she'll feel better? Well, I mean, we know why she doesn't mention any of this, right? Because it's not fashionable. And what matters to people like her is being fashionable. Quote, "This is serious," as she said Saturday. "We've got about 7-8 years to cut ourselves in half of what we use in fossil fuels. And unfortunately, the people that have the least responsibility for it are hit the hardest. Global South, people on islands, people of color. It's a tragedy that we have to absolutely stop. We have to arrest and jail those men. They're all men behind this." I kind of feel like she's probably got a pretty big carbon footprint herself. Oh, well, this is her $13 million Beverly Hills home. I mean, just imagine all the world-saving activism that happens there. I mean, you're going to save the world more efficiently if you're comfortable, right? I mean, this stuff, we've got about 7-8 years until the world ends, sure. Okay. I know that the Swedish teenager told you to be terrified. I still feel like most people have the common sense not to base their worldview on what they were told by a Swedish teenager. Quote, "It's good for us all to realize there would be no climate crisis if there was no racism." This is just so utterly idiotic. And you just have to recognize these people cannot have thought through any of what they're saying. Any of these people like Jane Fonda. I mean, I realize she probably loves the smell of her own farts, but a technological society can't run on them. There would be no climate crisis if there was no patriarchy. There is no patriarchy, not in the Western world. Again, maybe go to China. Maybe go to some other parts of the world that use a lot of fossil fuels. Maybe India, and go lecture them and see how that goes. But if you want to take that tack, well, there would be no modern world without the patriarchy then. You'd be living in a cave. White men are the things that matter, and then everything else. What civilization are you living in? What culture are you living in right now, you fucking moron? I mean, all this nonsense about white men, the patriarchy. Have you ever heard of, like, the Taliban? You ever heard of that? Maybe have some perspective, right? I mean, maybe she was even more brainwashed when she went to Vietnam. They turned her into the Manchurian actress or something. I don't know. All I know is just give her a Lifetime Achievement Award and send her off to Cuba. Everybody will be happier. Well, except the Cubans. Anyway, please subscribe, like, and share. Sharing really helps me out. I thank you for that. I will see you next time.